Washington added commitment from one of the nation's elite quarterbacks in the 2027 class on Tuesday in four-star Blake Roskopf.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into a special bonus edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network. And I'm coming at all you everydayers on this Tuesday with a special bonus show because the Huskies have, in fact, earned a commitment from one of the nation's top quarterbacks in 2027, and that's four-star Blake Roskopf from Desert Edge High School down in Arizona. And does this sound familiar? It probably does if you already listened to our Tuesday show, because things came together relatively quickly, where Washington did get a crystal ball from rivals Brandon Huffman to secure his commitment on Monday afternoon, Monday morning-ish, somewhere in that time frame. And then less than 24 hours later, he's announced his commitment. And this is a really great sign for the Huskies as they continue to try to build up what is really turning into an elite class. I'll talk about a little bit more with that later on, because we got to spend some time on this player. And again, if some of this sounds familiar, yeah, it should. Appreciate you listening. But at the same point in time, these are all really important things to talk about as it pertains to this 6'5", 235-pound absolute gunslinger of a quarterback who is ranked as the number 12 prospect at his position in the country, according to 247 Sports. And you go through the numbers from last season, he had a really solid year where he completed 66.1% of his passes for 37 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. And this is somebody who Washington came around on a little bit later in the cycle, where there were some other prospects that were prioritized a little bit later on. And then as the cycle just continued to move on, it felt like both sides continued to just reevaluate what was going on at the quarterback position. And after earning a commitment from four-star wide receiver Zerek Sidney, especially Roskopf's teammate down at Desert Edge High School, it felt like things really started to pick up between Washington and Blake Roskopf. And then obviously he comes on campus for junior day in early March, and things just continued to build and build and build for somebody who was one of the nation's most coveted quarterbacks. He had 30 offers to every corner of the country. Georgia, Indiana, North Carolina was one of the big schools that was in the mix. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, UCLA, Wisconsin. There were a whole bunch of just top flight programs that were in contention for his services. And the Huskies did a really great job of separating themselves from the pack. And there are a whole lot of things that go into this, right? Where he's going to be joining what will probably wind up being a crowded quarterback room. We'll see. There's probably a good chance at this point that somebody winds up hitting the portal. Maybe Demond Williams Jr. declares for the NFL draft. We talked about that a little bit earlier on in the day, so I won't dive too much into that, because I wanted to take more of this time to talk about the player. This is a guy who I hate making some of these player comparisons, because it feels a little bit, I don't want to say disingenuous, but a little bit unfair to some of these guys. But when I look at his particular play style, and again, this is why I think these things are unfair, because by no means am I saying this is who this player is going to turn into, but he reminds me a lot of Matthew Stafford, because a lot of the things that Blake Roskopf does especially well are he, with his giant frame, he stands in the pocket, delivers the ball downfield. He delivers it accurately to all three levels from multiple different arm slots, which I think is always really important when thinking about this Jedd Fisch offense. But on top of that, one of the biggest things with Roskopf is that he is a really solid athlete for his size, where it's not necessarily something you see a lot of on film, where when you do turn on the film, you'll see him, oh yeah, okay, he rolls out to both sides of the field and is able to set his feet or make throws or throw on the run, and all of those sorts of things that do fit very, very well in Jedd Fisch's offense, when we are going to see a lot of those bootleg type rollouts. We've seen that with Demond Williams for a couple of years now. And I think that's a really important thing to note here as it pertains to Blake Roskopf, because he might not necessarily have that high-end speed or athleticism that Demond Williams does, but he can absolutely go and get you 10 yards with his legs when you need him to. And it's just not something it seems like he's asked to do a whole lot in his offense. So if you can ask him to continue developing that way, and you look at all the natural talent that he possesses as a passer, this is the kind of player that can absolutely continue to elevate your offense as you move forward. And again, being 6'5", he's got that ability to stand in there a little bit better than some of the shorter quarterbacks that Jedd Fisch has recruited over his tenure, to make those throws over the middle of the field with confidence and just deliver that ball along with, again, having the arm talent to make those deep sideline throws and all of those sorts of things that can really help this offense stretch vertically with this incredibly talented core of wide receivers that this coaching staff has been putting together over the last several years. So when I look at this addition, I think this is perfect for what Jedd Fisch and this coaching staff wants to do. And they put themselves in a position where they were in the market for several talented quarterbacks. So I'm curious to see how this is going to work out long-term in terms of, obviously, the elephant in the room being what Damon Williams wants to do for his senior season, where we've talked about the transfer portal ad nauseum. We don't need to go down that road. He can declare for the NFL draft if he wants to. And if he wants to come back, it's a great opportunity for Roskopf to sit back there, redshirt, and then potentially compete for that starting job as a redshirt freshman. So there are a whole lot of different just paths, avenues, whatever you want to say, that his career can turn into at Washington. But at the end of the day, what I think is most important about this is the kind of player who, when you look at what you need to continue moving forward in the Big Ten, a player like Blake Roskopf is perfect for everything. Again, whether it be the pass catchers that you're putting around him and are going to continue trying to put around him. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But you look at pairing him with the 2 4-star wide receivers that you already have committed in Zerek Sidney, his high school teammate. Again, in Braylon Pope, the top 100 player, according to Rivals, from the state of Washington. There are so many talented guys that he can throw to. And with the way this offense just is able to create separation, create space for some of these receivers, he really can just continue to rack up the numbers. And as the Huskies continue to look to move forward in the Big Ten, he's one of these guys where I look at just what Washington quarterbacks have been for a very long time. He has all of the traits and all of the talent to just continue down that road and that line of what has been a whole lot of success at the quarterback position at Washington. And as the Huskies continue to sit in the top 10 of the 247 Sports class rankings, adding Roskopf is a massive addition, but he certainly can't be the last, as the Huskies are really looking to put together an elite class. And we'll get to that right after a message from our good friends over at Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood Prediction Markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play-by-play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps. Trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. And we've got a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters. Every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get on the action. You can bet just $5, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments throughout the playoffs. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. So as we move on here, again, this is a class that has been sitting inside the top 10 of 247 Sports' class rankings for a while now. And a lot of that is because of the volume and the depth now, where you have 11 commits in this class. And that's great. You've done a great job of building that up early, where I look at the offensive side of the ball, especially right now in terms of the rankings, which, as we know, aren't everything, but is a really nice moniker for people around the country who might not necessarily be following very closely what the Huskies are putting together. And you've got a pair of 4-star receivers in Braylon Pope, in Zerek Sidney. Now you've got a 4-star quarterback in Blake Roskopf. You've got a 4-star running back in Jeremy Adeyanju as well. So I think this is a really nice start and really nice building blocks, where I mentioned these guys on the show we released earlier today as well. So I just want to throw their names out there really fast. As the Huskies continue to look to build on the offensive side of the ball, especially, a couple of guys who I'm keeping a very, very close eye on are Tre Moore and Osani Gayles, where Tre Moore, the 4-star wide receiver out of Texas, one of the top 20 players in the nation at his position, is somebody that the Huskies are expecting to host for an official visit on June 19th, where he's down to a final five of Texas A&M, Miami's in there, LSU, and Washington. And it really feels like the Huskies and the Tigers are the two teams at the top of his recruitment right now. And with Washington having the final visit, obviously it's going to be a very long road to get there. But I feel really good about where Washington stands with the way they've prioritized him for a very, very long time. And I think that he's one of those guys who, Kevin Cummings said it during Washington's pre-spring press conference, where so much of what this coaching staff is looking to do is to add size at the position. And if you can add Tre Moore and Braylon Pope, two guys who are standing at 6'3" and above, that is a really nice addition in terms of, again, not just that size, but Tre Moore is somebody who, whenever we talk about him on this show, he is somebody who could absolutely play early in the scheme. He is somebody who will just continue to elevate the talent in that room. And I would say the same thing about four-star wide receiver Osani Gayles from IMG Academy down in Florida, where originally a product of California. He's got some family that live up here, which has really helped the Huskies get a strong foothold in his recruitment. And this is another guy in that same mold where Washington has done a great job recruiting blue chip receivers and getting them on the field early. So far through Jedd Fisch's tenure, we're going to see a whole lot more of that this fall. And Osani Gayles, being a top 50 prospect in the nation, is just another guy in that same vein of, okay, yeah, that guy comes in, he's elevating that room, he's pushing for playing time right away. And all of a sudden, this passing attack, where you look at what a Blake Roskopf can do to continue to elevate this at all three levels of the field with what he can do with his arm, you bring in a guy like Osani Gayles alongside of him, yeah, you're really cooking with something there. And I think it's really exciting to think about what that could be going forward because, again, Washington has shown that they can recruit at a very, very high level over these last couple of years. So I'd really like to see that continue with some of these guys because if you can continue to put together a high-end passing attack, we've seen what that can look like in this conference. So I'm keeping an eye on those guys very, very closely. But as we look at the offensive side of the ball here, the biggest question now is the offensive line. And I've said it before on this show, and I'm going to say it again. The Huskies are doing a tremendous job with some of their top targets along the offensive line, whether you think of some of these interior guys, whether it be three-star center Reese Russell, 4-stars Lincoln Maggio, and Jacoba Doyle. I look at 3-star tackle Ben Lowther, somebody else we talked about earlier on today. But I wanted to highlight 5-star offensive tackle Oluwasemilore Olubobola specifically because after John Ioane's commitment a couple of weeks ago on the 247 Sports live broadcast, Tom Loy was very quick to point out that Washington is among the top programs in pursuit of his services. He's got 40-plus offers. He was really impressed by what he got to see on Junior Day. He's planning on coming back out for another unofficial visit at some point this month during spring practice. And Washington is pushing to set up an official with him as well. So getting him out 3 times over the course of a couple of months would be a massive win for this program. And obviously it's never easy to go into New Jersey and take a top 20 player in the nation, I should say, all the way out to the West Coast. But it feels like Washington is just sitting in a good spot here. And it's really hard to call them or really anybody with how his recruitment in particular seems to be playing out the favorite at this point in time. But just hearing that Washington is in that group right now is a really nice first step. And if you want to put together a class that can really build on what you did in 2026, he's the kind of guy that you absolutely need to make sure that you can secure, get on campus for another visit, and just send a message to the rest of the country saying, yeah, we're doing a really great job on keeping some of the best players on the West Coast home. But yeah, hey, look, now we got this whole extra angle. We can go out to the East Coast. We can go all over the nation and reel in some of the best prospects in the country. So I'm very curious to see what that looks like. But I also wanted to make sure I talked about a couple of these guys on the defensive side of the ball as well, because now that you got 4-star John Ioane in the boat at defensive tackle, I'm looking at Tevita Nonu as the next guy who can absolutely help elevate this class. Just another big disruptive force on the interior where John Ioane is somebody who can absolutely eat up double teams and do a whole lot of different things for you on the interior, where Tevita Nonu can be a really disruptive gap shooter for you at the next level. And I think he's somebody who, as he continues to add weight and add size, that he can absolutely be a big factor against the run game as well. But when I look at what Washington really needs along the interior of the defensive line, It's guys who can disrupt and guys who can get after the quarterback. So I want to keep a close eye on him and how this recruitment plays out, because he's got 3 official visits set right now: Arizona, UCLA, and Washington. And with the relationship that he's been able to develop with Jason Kafusi, I feel like the Huskies are sitting in a very, very solid spot there as well. So again, in terms of what you need to continue leveling up and building after adding 3 4-star defensive linemen last year in Derek Coleman-Brusa, in J.D. Hill, and T.I.U. Mukais, adding a guy like Tevita Nonu, keeping him home, being from O'Day High School here in Seattle, that's one of those guys who, again, all of a sudden, the optics and the build of what you need to succeed in the Big Ten, all of a sudden, yeah, you're really sitting in a great spot there. And 2 more guys I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. One of them is 4-star cornerback Censere Gaylord from IMG Academy down in Florida as well, where another product of California who made the move out there. This is a guy where you look at his top 6, he's got Georgia Tech in there, Oregon, Tennessee, but the Huskies have just always been sitting in a very, very solid spot here. And I think that he is somebody who, as you continue to look at just what Ryan Walters wants to do in the secondary, the physicality and the quick trigger that he plays with, I feel like he is the perfect kind of player to just line up at outside corner. And again, this is why I hate making some of these player comparisons. I mean this strictly in terms of utilization within the scheme. Look like what Devon Witherspoon did for Ryan Walters at Illinois, where it wasn't just, oh, okay, yeah, this is a guy who we can absolutely leave on an island and trust in coverage. It's, no, that guy, we can send him on run blitzes. We can send him after the quarterback. He can blow up screens. He can do all of these sorts of different things. And with the physicality and just all of these other sorts of things that he plays with on film, I don't want to just keep repeating myself there. I think that he is somebody that the Huskies have done a very good job of developing a relationship with, and just seem to be sitting in a place where, okay, yeah, if he wants to come back to the West Coast, Washington would be a tremendous option for him. And one more guy who just seems to be in that same vein at this point in time is 4-star safety Gavin Williams from down in Southern California, where top 100 prospect, and he's down to 5. He's got Notre Dame in there, Washington. They seem to be the 2 real favorites at this point in time, where UCLA, USC also are really making a push there. But it feels like, again, from a Tom Loy report, that he might want to stay on the West Coast. And if it comes down to Washington and Notre Dame, the Huskies have really put a big emphasis on what they want to keep doing at safety. And I feel like with a guy like that, with the range and the ball skills that he possesses in that post safety position, that with what Taylor Mays has been doing on the recruiting trail, especially, I'm not going to count out Washington there. And if you want to build an elite class, again, yeah, you did a tremendous job of bringing in talent at all of these positions in 2026, but you need more. If you want to be a perennial college football playoff contender and you want to be one of the best teams in the nation on a year in, year out basis, you need more. You need to do that again. So I'm very curious to see what that might look like moving forward. But that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. If you like what we have to offer here on Locked On Huskies, please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure to click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new show. Plus, from the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, as it does help the show out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time.